Why sunlight is still best. You can really track the advance of civilization by the state of its lighting above all, its power costs and luminous efficacy. efficacy. That last measure refers to the ability of a light source to produce a meaningful response in the eye, and it is the total luminous flux luminous flux in lumens divided by the rated power in watts under photopic conditions, that is under bright light, which allows color perception. The luminous efficacy of visible light peaks at 683 LMW at a wavelength of 555 nanometers. That's in the green part of the spectrum. The color that seems at any given level of power to be the brightest for millennia. Our sources of artificial light lagged 3 orders of magnitude behind this theoretical peak. Candles had a luminous efficacy of just 0.2 to 0.3 LMW. Coal gas lights, common in European cities during the 19th century, did 5 or 6 times as well. And the carbon filaments of Edison's early bulbs hardly did better than that. Efficacies took a leap with metal filaments, first with osmium in 1898 to 5.5 LMW. Then after 1901 with tantalum to 7 LMW, and a decade or so later tungsten radiating in a vacuum got up to 10 LMW, putting a tungsten filament filament in a mixture of nitrogen and argon raised the efficacy of common household lamps to 12 lmW and coiling the filaments beginning in 1934 helped to bring incandescent efficacies to more than 15 lmW for 100 watt lamps, which were the standard source of bright light during the first two post-Second World War decades. Lights based on different principles: low pressure sodium lamps and low pressure mercury vapor lamps, fluorescent lights were introduced during the 1930s. By they only came to widespread use in the 1950s. Today's best fluorescent lights with electronic ballasts can produce about 100 lmW. High pressure sodium lamps put out up to 150 lmW, and low pressure sodium lamps can reach 200 lmW. However, the low pressure lamps produce only monochromatic yellow light at 589 nanometers, which is why they aren't used in homes, but rather for streets illumination. Our best hope now rests on light emitting diodes, LEDs. The first ones were invented in 1962 and provided only red light. A decade later came green, and then during the 1990s, high intensity blue. By coating such blue LEDs with fluorescent phosphors, engineers were able to convert some of the blue light into warmer colors, and thus produce white light suitable for indoor illumination. The theoretical limit for bright white LEDs is about 300 lmW, but commercially available lamps are still a long way from achieving that rate. Philips sells LEDs in the United States, which has a 120 volt standard that offer a luminous efficacy of 89 lmw for 18 watt soft white and dimmable bulbs, replacing 100 watt incandescent lights. In Europe, where the voltage range from 220 to 240 volts. The company sells 172 lmw LED tube, replacing the 1.5 meter long European fluorescent tubes. High efficacy LEDs are already delivering significant electricity savings worldwide. It also helps that they can provide light for 3 hours a day for about 20 years, and if you forget to switch them off, you will hardly notice on your next electricity bill. But much like all other sources of artificial light, they still cannot match natural light spectrum. Incandescent lights gave out too little blue light, and fluorescent lights had hardly any red. LEDs have too little intensity in the red part of the spectrum and too much in the blue part. They don't quite please the eye. Light efficacies of artificial sources have improved by 2 orders of magnitude since 1880, but replicating sunlight indoors still remains beyond our reach. Why we need bigger batteries? It would be a lot easier to expand our use of solar and wind energy if we had better ways to store the large quantities of electricity we would need to cover gaps in the flow of that energy. Even in sunny Los Angeles, a typical house roofed with enough photovoltaic panels to meet its average needs would still face daily shortfalls of shortfalls of up up to 80% of the demand in January and daily January and January and daily daily surpluses surpluses of up surpluses of up to 65% in May. You can take such a house of the grid only by installing a voluminous uh, and expensive assembly of lithium ion batteries, and even a small national grid one handling 10 to 30 gigawatts could rely entirely on intermittent sources only if it had gigawatt scale storage capable of working for many hours. Since 2007, more than half of humanity has lived in has lived in urban areas, and by 2050 more than 6.3 billion people 6.3 billion people will live in cities, accounting for two thirds of the global population, with a rising share in mega cities of more than 10 million people. See the rise of megacities. This page. Most of those people will live in high rises, so that there will be only a limited possibility of local generation, but they they will need and they will need an unceasing supply of electricity to power their homes, services, industries, and transportation. Think about an Asian megacity hit by a typhoon for a day or two. For a day or two. Even if long distance lines could supply more than half of the city's demand, it would still need many gigawatt hours gigawatt hours from storage to tide it over until intermittent generation could be restored, or use fossil fuels backup. The very thing we are trying to get away from. Lithium ion ion batteries are today's storage workhorses in both stationary and mobile applications. They deploy a lithium compound for their positive electrode and graphite for the negative electrode. Common lead lead acid lead acid car batteries use lead oxide and lead for their electrodes, but despite having much higher energy density than lead acid acid batteries, lithium ion batteries are still inadequate inadequate to meet large scale long term storage needs. The largest storage system comprising more than 18,000 lithium ion batteries is being built in Long Beach for Southern California Edison by AES Corp. When it is completed in 2021, it will be capable of running at 100 megawatts for 4 hours. But that energy total of 400 megawatt hours is still two orders of magnitude lower than what a large Asian city would need if deprived of its intermittent supply. So we have to scale up storage, but how? Sodium sulfur batteries have higher energy density than lithium ion ones, but hot liquid metal is a most inconvenient electrolyte. Flow batteries, which store energy directly in the electrolyte, are still in an early stage of deployment. Capacitors can't provide electricity over a long enough time, and compressed air and flywheels the perennial favorites of popular journalism have made it into only a dozen or so smaller or mid-size installations. Perhaps the best Long-term uh, hope is to utilize cheap solar electricity to decompose water by electrolysis and use the produced hydrogen as a multi-purpose fuel, but such a hydrogen based based economy is not not imminent. And so when going big, we must still rely on a technology introduced in the 1890s, pumped storage. You build one reservoir reservoir high up, link it with pipes to another one lower down, and use cheaper nighttime electricity to pump water uphill so that it can turn turbines during times of peak demand. Pumped storage accounts for more than 99% of the world's storage capacity, capacity, but but inevitably it entails energy loss on the order of 25%. Many installations have short-term capacities in capacities in excess of 1 gigawatt. The largest one is about 3 gigawatts, and more than one would be needed for a megacity completely dependent on solar and wind generation. But most megacities are near the steep escarpments or deep cut mountain valleys you would need for pumped storage. Many including Shanghai, Kolkata, and Karachi are on coastal plains. They could rely on pumped storage only if it were provided through long distance transmission. The need for more compact, more flexible, larger scale, less costly electricity storage is self-evident, but the miracle has been slow in coming. Why electric container ships are a hard sale? Just about everything you wear or use around the house once set in steel boxes on ships whose diesel engines propelled them from Asia emitting particulates and carbon dioxide. Surely you would think uh, you would think you would think we can do better. After all, we have had electric locomotives locomotives for more than a century and high-speed electric trains for more than half a century. And recently we have been expanding the global fleet of cars. Electric cars. Why not get electric container ships? Actually, the first one is scheduled to operate in 2021. The Yara Birkeland, built by Marine Technique in Norway, is not only the world's first electric-powered zero-emissions container ship, but also the first autonomous commercial vessels. Vessel. But don't write off. But don't write off of giant and diesel powered container ships are their critical role in a globalized economy just yet. Here is a back of the envelope calculation that explains why. Containers come in different sizes, but most are the standard 20-foot equivalent units, TEU. Rectangular prisms 6.1 meters 20 feet long and 2.4 meters wide. The first small container ships of the 1960s carried mere hundreds of TEUs. Now four ships launched in 2019 and belonging to MSC Switzerland, Gulson, Summer, Lenny, and Mia hold the record at 23,756 TEUs each. When they travel very slowly, 16 knots in order to save fuels. These ships can make the journey from Hong Kong to Hamburg via the Suez Canal Suez Canal more than 21,000 kilometers in 30 days. 30 days. 30 days. Now consider the Yara Birkeland. Um, it will carry just 120 TEUs. Its service speed will be 6 knots and 6 knots, and its longest intended operation will be 30 nautical miles between Herøya and Larvik in Norway. Today's state-of-the-art diesel container vessels thus carry nearly 200 times as many boxes. Our distances almost 400 times as long at 400 times as long at speeds 3 to 4 times as fast as the pioneering electric ship can handle. What would it take to make an electric ship that can carry up to 18,000 TEUs? Now a common intercontinental load in a 31-day trip. Most 31st day trip. Most of today's efficient diesel vessels burn 4,650 tons of fuels, so low quality residual oil or diesel. With each ton packing with each ton packing for 42 gigajoules. That's an energy density of about 11,700 watt hours per kilogram versus 300 watt hour per kilogram for today's lithium-ion batteries, at nearly 40-fold difference. The total fuels demand for the trip is about 195 terajoules or 54 gigawatt hours. Large diesel engines and those installed in container ships are the largest we have are about 50% efficient, which means that the energy actually used for propulsion is half the total fuels demand, or about 27 gigawatt hours. To match that demand, large electric motors operating at 90% efficiency would need about 30 gigawatts gigawatts hours of electricity. Load the ship with today's best commercial Li-ion batteries, 300 watt hour per watt hour kilogram, and still it would have to carry about 100,000 tons of them to go non-stop from Asia to Europe in a month. For comparison, electric cars contain about 500 kilograms or 0.5 tons of Li-ion batteries. Those batteries alone would take up about 40% of maximum cargo capacity, and economically ruinous proposition. Never mind the difficulties involved in charging and operating the ship. And even if we push batteries to an energy density of 500 watt-hour kilograms, sooner than might be expected, an 18,000 TEU vessel would still need nearly 60,000 tons of them for a long intercontinental voyage at a relatively slow speed. The conclusion is obvious. To have an electric ship whose batteries and motors weigh no more than the fuel, about 5,000 tons, and the diesel engine about 2,000 tons. 2,000 tons in today's large containers vessels. We would need batteries with an energy density more than 10 times as high as today's best lithium-ion units. But that's a tall order indeed. In the past 70 years, the energy density of the best commercial batteries hasn't even quadrupled. The real cost of electricity in many affluent countries, the new century brought a shift in the long-term trajectory of electricity prices. They have increased not only in the monies of the day, but even of the adjustments for inflation. Even so, electricity remains an admirable bargain, though as expected, a bargain with many national national peculiarities peculiarities resulting not only from specific uh, peculiarities resulting not only from specific contribution by different sources but also from persistent governmental regulation. Historical perspective shows the trajectory trajectory of of an extraordinary value, and that explains electricity's ubiquity ubiquity quality in the modern world when adjusted for inflation and expressed in constant 2019 19 monies. The average price of US residential electricity tell from 4.81 dollars per kilowatt hour in 19 kilowatt hour in 1902, the first year for which the national mean is available, to 30.5 cents in 1950, then to 12.2 cents 2 cents in 2000, and in nearly and in early 2019 it was just marginally higher at 12.7 cents kilowatt hour. This represents represents a relative decline of more than 97%, or stated in reverse, a dollar now buys nearly 38 times more electricity than it did in 1902. But during that period, average again, inflation adjusted manufacturing wages nearly sextupled, which means that in a blue collar household, electricity is now more than 200 times more affordable. Its effective earning adjusted cost is less than 0.5% of the 1902 rate, and then it was almost 120 years ago. But we buy electricity in order for it to be converted into light or kinetic energy or heat, and the intervening efficiency improvements have made its final uses an even greater bargain with lighting offering the most impressive gain. In 1902, a light bulb with a tantalum filament produced seven lumens per watt. In 2019, a dimmable LED light delivers 89 LMW. That means that a lumen of electric light for a working class household is now approximately 2,500 times more affordable than it was in the early 20th century. International perspective shows some surprising differences. The US has cheaper residential electricity than any affluent nation, with the exceptions of Canada and Norway. The high-income countries with the highest share of hydroelectricity generation, 59 and 95% respectively. When using prevailing exchange rates, the U.S. residential price is about 55% of the European Union's mean, about half the Japanese average, and less than 40% of the German rate. Electricity prices in India, Mexico, Turkey, and South Africa are lower than in the U.S. when converted by using official exchange rates, but they are considerably higher when using purchasing power parties, more than twice as much in India, nearly 3 times as much in Turkey. When reading reports about dramatically falling costs of photovoltaic cells, see the slow rise of photovoltaics at this page, and the highly competitive pricing of wind turbines. A naive observer might conclude that the rising shares of new renewables, solar and wind, will usher in an era of falling electricity prices. But in reality, the opposite has been true. Before the year 2000, when the country embarked on its large scale and expensive program of expanded renewable electricity generation. Energiewende German residential electricity prices were low and declining, bottoming out at less than 0.14 kilowatt hour in the year 2000. By 2015, Germany's combined solar and wind capacity of nearly 84 gigawatts had surpassed the total installed in fossil fuels plants, and by March 2019, more than 20% of all electricity came from the new renewables, but electricity prices had more than doubled in 18 years to 0.29 kilowatt hours. The EU's largest economy thus has the continent's second highest electricity prices. Only in heavily wind-dependent Denmark in 2018, 41% of its generation was from wind. Is the price higher at 0.31 kilowatt hour? A similar contrast can be seen in the US. In California, with its increasing share of new renewables, electricity prices have been rising five times faster than the national mean, and are now nearly 60% higher than the countrywide average. The inevitably slow pace of energy transitions. In 1800, only the UK and a few localities in Europe and North China burned coal to generate heat. 98% of the world's primary energy came from biomass fuels, mostly from wood and charcoal in deforested regions. Energy also came from straw and from dried animal dung. By 1900, as coal mining expanded and oil and gas production began in North America and Russia. Biomass supplied half of the world's primary energy. By 1900, 1950, it was still nearly 30%, and at the beginning of the 21st century, it had declined to 12%. Though in many sub-Saharan countries, it remains above 80%. Clearly, it has taken a while to accomplish the transition from new carbon in plant tissues to old fossil carbon in coal, crude oil, and natural gas. We are now in the earliest stage of a much more challenging transition. The carbonization of the global energy supply, which is needed in order to avoid the worst consequences of global warming. Contrary to a common impression, this transition has not been proceeding at a pace resembling the adoption of cell phones. In absolute terms, the world has been running into not away from carbon, see running into carbon at this page, and in relative terms, our gains remain in single digits.